stood at the edge of the plateau and watched the storm come. The wind on 442b was not like the wind on Earth. It moved with power and purpose, picking up rocks the size of human heads and hurling them across the orange landscape like toys. The dust was thick enough to block the sun, turning day into a strange twilight where nothing was clear and everything was dangerous. He had been stationed at Outpost 7 for 6 months. 6 months of routine patrols, recording data and following protocol. The outpost was small, just and 4 other soldiers who rotated their shifts to keep watch over the settlement 30 kilometers away. The settlement held 200 humans, most of them scientists and their families, was there to protect them if anything went wrong. Nothing had ever gone wrong, not until today. The object fell from the sky like a meteor, trailing fire and leaving a burn mark across the clouds. Watched it through the dust storm, tracking its path as it descended toward the valley on the far side of the ridge. His hand moved to his communication device. Protocol said to report any unidentified vessel immediately. Protocol said to call it in and wait for orders. Had been following protocol his entire career. He was 32 years old and had spent the last 10 years in the military. He knew how to follow orders. He knew how to do his job without asking questions. But something made him stop before he sent the transmission. The crash was only maybe 2 kilometers away. If there was a threat, waiting for orders meant waiting maybe 30 minutes for a response team to arrive. 30 minutes was a long time. 30 minutes was enough time for a hostile force to get organized, to assess the situation, to prepare an attack. Made a decision that he knew broke protocol. He did not send the emergency transmission. Instead, he activated the seal on his environmental suit and began moving down the slope toward the crash site. The armor was heavy, but it was designed for this. The suit would keep him alive in the thin atmosphere of 442b. It would protect him from the radiation and the cold. It would keep him breathing when the air tried to kill him. The descent took longer than he expected because of the storm. The dust got into everything, scraping against the suit's protective coating and making visibility almost zero. Used his suit's thermal imaging to navigate, watching the ground ahead of him as the dust swirled and raged around his armored form. When he reached the crash site, the storm had begun to fade slightly. He could see the vessel now, a sleek ship made of metal that shimmered with a light that seemed to come from inside the material itself. The hull was fractured along one side, pieces of it scattered across the rocky ground. Smoke was still rising from the wreckage. Moved carefully, scanning for movement or heat signatures that might indicate survivors or threats. His military training took over. Every step was deliberate. Every movement was measured. He checked the perimeter first before approaching the wreckage itself. That was when he found her. She was half buried in ash near a rocky crevasse, maybe 15 meters from the main impact zone. Her skin was unlike anything he had ever seen. It seemed to change color as he looked at it, shifting between silver and violet like light reflecting off water. Her eyes were large and dark, taking up more space on her face than human eyes would. Her body was slender and delicate, covered by a form-fitting suit made of some material did not recognize. There was blue blood on the ground near her side, and could see the wound where it was coming from. She made a sound when she saw him. It was something between a growl and a whimper, a noise that came from an animal in pain. Her hands came up quickly, and thought for just a moment that she might attack him. Instead, she pulled herself further back into the crevasse, her large eyes fixed on his armored suit. Held his hands out in front of him, showing that they were empty and that he meant no threat. He moved slowly, every motion controlled and careful. "I am not going to hurt you," said. His voice sounded loud in the suit's communication system. "My name is I am human." The alien girl's eyes narrowed. She hissed something in a language did not understand, but her tone was clear enough. She was afraid, but there was intelligence in her eyes. She was assessing him, trying to understand what he was and what he wanted. "I am going to come closer," said. I want to help you, you are hurt. He reached down to his suit's medical kit without breaking eye contact with the alien. He opened it slowly, showing the girl what was inside. Bandages, pain medication, wound sealer, tools designed to treat human injuries, but maybe some of them would work on whatever this creature was. The alien girl did not move. She watched him with those enormous eyes as he approached. When knelt down beside her, she flinched but did not strike. Her skin was cycling through colors rapidly now, patterns that seemed to track her emotional state. Could see blues and reds mixing with the silver, colors that probably meant fear and pain. "What is your name?" asked as he began to examine her wound. For a long moment she did not answer. Then she said, "My name is You Should Leave. I am Your People Should Avoid Us." "I am staying," said. He was opening the wound sealer now, preparing to use it on her injury. The hole in her side was deep and dangerous looking. "I am going to fix this." Skin flickered with colors that did not recognize. She did not try to stop him as he worked. She lay still while he cleaned the wound and applied the sealant. The blue blood stopped flowing, and the edges of the wound began to close under the sealant's influence. "Why do you help me?" asked when he was finished. "We are strangers. By all logic, you should have reported my presence and allowed your military to engage." Sat back and looked at the alien girl. Her skin had settled into a softer color now, a mixture of silver and pale blue. She was no longer vibrating with visible fear. "Because you are hurt," said. "Because you are alone. I do not need any other reason than that." Skin flickered with colors had not seen before, soft golds mixed with the silver. She reached out slowly, and her delicate fingers touched his armored glove. When he did not pull away, she seemed to consider him more carefully. "No being has ever shown me kindness without benefit," said quietly. "Your logic is broken." Smiled, maybe. Or maybe my logic just includes things that yours does not. The night was long and cold on 442B and stayed with the alien girl in the shelter of the crevasse. He shared his water and his emergency rations. As the stars came out above them, told him about her ship and her mission. She was a scout for a people called the. They had sent her to observe humanity and to determine whether humans were a threat to them. As listened, he understood the weight of what she was telling him. They were deciding whether humanity deserved to exist, and somehow his actions tonight might change that decision. The second morning on 442B brought weak light from a distant sun. Woke to find already conscious, her eyes tracking him as he moved. Her skin was still the pale blue and silver color it had been when she fell asleep. He did not know if that was her normal state or if it meant something about how she felt. He was still learning to read her. Checked her wound first. The sealant had held through the night. The area around it was no longer bleeding, and the inflammation had gone down. She would need proper medical attention from her own people to fully heal, but for now, she was stable. "How are you feeling?" asked as he opened another emergency ration. It was not much, just a protein bar and some water, but it was all he had left. Accepted the food and ate it carefully, studying it with her large dark eyes before putting it in her mouth. "I feel pain," she said with bluntness, "but I am alive. That is better than the alternative." They sat together in the shelter of the rocks while the day grew warmer. The temperature on 442B rose significantly during daylight hours but dropped just as fast when the sun went down. The swings were hard on a human body, and could see that was cold despite the improved temperature. After several hours, curiosity got the better of. She began to stare at Suit with an intensity that made him wonder if she was assessing it as a threat. "Your armor," she said finally. "It is combat-rated and self-sufficient, yes. You have sealed compartments for life support enhancement, biological augmentation chambers, tactical systems integration." It was not a question. It was a statement of what she expected to find. Shook his head. "No, it is just a suit. It helps with the environment. It provides oxygen. It has basic medical supplies and some tools, that is all. Stared at him for a long moment. Her skin flickered rapidly through a spectrum of colors, moving too fast for to follow the pattern. Finally, she said, "Show me." Found himself undoing the seals along his upper arm. The suit was designed for emergency repairs, so the seals came apart easily enough. He peeled back the flexible armor plates, revealing the skin beneath. His arm was pale from months under artificial lighting and the dim light of this world. The muscles were defined but clearly not enhanced by any technology. He extended his arm toward. She reached out with the same hesitation she had shown when touching him the first time. Her fingers were incredibly delicate, almost fragile. She traced the line of his veins beneath his skin. She felt the pulse of his heartbeat at his wrist. Her touch was gentle but thorough, like a scientist examining a specimen in a laboratory. Then she pulled away the armor plating further. She exposed his shoulder, his collarbone, the vulnerable line of his neck. Could feel the cold air from the crevasse on his exposed skin, but he did not try to stop her. He sensed that this was important to her. "There is nothing," said. Her voice carried shock and something that might have been horror. "No protective layers beneath the armor, no technology integrated into your flesh, no reinforcement, no augmentation, just biological tissue." "Just skin and bone," said simply. Pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. Her skin began to cycle through colors rapidly, moving through fear and confusion and something else that could not name. She stood up slowly, her injured side making the movement careful and deliberate. "You are completely unmodified," said. It was not a question. "Yes. Your entire species is unmodified." "As far as I know, yes." Began to pace away from him, her skin still shifting through colors that seemed to reflect some kind of internal struggle. Watched her, wondering if he had made a mistake by revealing his vulnerability to her. If she decided he was a threat, if she activated some kind of distress signal that could arrive within hours. But she did not call for help. Instead, she turned back to look at him with an expression that seemed caught between wonder and concern. "On my world," said, "we have been advancing our biological forms for 15,000 years. We have reinforced our muscles to be stronger than any natural form could be. We have enhanced our neural capabilities until we can calculate mathematics that would take your people lifetimes to solve. We have integrated technology with living flesh to create something superior to nature, something advanced." She paused and her skin shifted to a deep violet color. "And you walk among the stars with nothing but biological tissue and a suit made of material. You move through space without enhancement, without modification." "We use tools and technology," said. "We extend what we can do with our minds and our hands, but we do not change ourselves. We do not need to modify our bodies to be worthy of survival." Returned to where he sat and looked at his exposed shoulder again. She touched it gently, almost reverently, running her fingers across his collarbone. "Does this not cause you constant suffering, to be so vulnerable, to have flesh that can be torn and bones that can be broken?" "Yes," said. He was being honest with her now, laying out the truth without any filters. "Cold hurts me. Gravity here is different from my home world. It pulls on my body constantly and makes everything harder. Everything about this place is trying to kill me. But pain does not mean I should stop trying to survive. Pain means I am still alive." Skin shifted to a soft green, mixed with silver like starlight reflecting off water. "You are either the bravest being I have encountered or the most foolish. I have not yet decided which one." "Maybe I am both," said. They talked for the rest of the day, asked him endless questions about human life. How did humans survive without biological enhancement? How did they fight wars with unmodified bodies? How did they build civilization when they were so limited? Answered her questions as honestly as he could. He told her about human history. He told her about wars and diseases and suffering. But he also told her about art and music and love. He told her about the way humans could create beauty even when their bodies were limited. He told her about sacrifice and courage, and the choice to help others even when it cost you something. As the day turned to evening and the temperature began to drop, moved closer to him. She rested her head against his shoulder, and her skin took on that soft green and silver color. Her delicate body was warm against his armored suit. "If you are so fragile," said quietly, "how is it that you are the first being I have ever met who treats me as an equal? How is it that your kind is the one showing me what it means to be truly alive?" Did not have an answer to that question. But as the stars came out above them and the cold descended on 442b once again, he realized that something fundamental had shifted. Was no longer looking at him as an alien or a potential threat. She was looking at him as something new, something that challenged everything she had been taught about what it meant to be advanced and worthy. 3 days passed on 442b with no rescue signal from. Began to wonder if she was choosing not to call for help, or if her communication equipment had been damaged in the crash. Each morning, he checked her wound. Each day, it improved. By the third morning, was able to walk without pain, though she moved carefully to avoid putting too much stress on her healing side. It was on that third day that decided to tell him the truth about her mission. They were sitting on a high rock looking out over the landscape. The orange dust had settled, leaving the world visible again. In the distance, could see the mountains that formed the far edge of the plateau. The sky was a deep purple color, almost peaceful. "I was sent here to assess your people," said without preamble, "to observe you, to determine if you are a threat to my civilization." Had suspected this, but hearing her say it out loud made it real. "And have you decided?" "I was going to tell my commanders that you should be eliminated," said. Her skin was dark blue now, a color that seemed to indicate shame or regret. "I was going to recommend that the council order your extinction. Your people are fragmented. You fight among yourselves. You have not achieved true unity. This makes you unpredictable and dangerous." Felt cold in his chest. This was the moment that would determine everything. This was the moment where words could mean the difference between human survival and human annihilation. "And now," he asked carefully. "Now I do not know what to tell them," said. Her skin flickered rapidly, cycling through colors that expressed confusion and conflict. "When I arrived at 442b, I was certain of my mission. The data was clear. You were primitive. You were unmodified. You had not achieved the technological advancement necessary to be anything but inferior." She turned to look at directly. Her large dark eyes held something that looked like desperation. "Then my ship crashed, and instead of using your superior strength to capture me and take my ship, you helped me. You used your medical knowledge to seal my wound. You gave me your food and your water when you did not know if you would survive without them. You showed kindness to a stranger who was assessing whether your entire species should continue to exist." Did not know what to say. He waited while continued. "The believe in logic above all things," said. "We abandoned emotion 15,000 years ago because we determined that emotion was illogical. It clouds judgment. It prevents perfect decision-making. So we modified ourselves. We removed the parts of our biology that created emotional response. We became pure logic and pure calculation." She paused, and her skin shifted to a combination of colors that seemed to express something profound. "But you have shown me something that my people cannot achieve through pure logic. You have shown me that compassion is stronger than fear. That kindness without benefit is more powerful than any technology. That mercy is not weakness." Reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were delicate in his, almost fragile. "What will you tell the council?" "I will tell them the truth," said. Her voice was steady now, and her skin had settled into a bright silver. "I will tell them that humanity is not a threat because of your weakness. You are worthy of existence because of your strength. You are strong in ways that my people have forgotten." They sat in silence for a long time after that, understood what was doing. She was deciding to report honestly about her experience, which meant going against what she had been trained to believe. It meant recommending that the council change their course of action toward humanity. "What if they do not listen?" asked. "What if they ignore your report and proceed anyway?" "Then I will have done what I could," said, "but I cannot ignore what I have learned. My people place great value on truth and on logical analysis of evidence. If I present to them what I have witnessed, they must account for it in their calculations." She pulled his exposed arm toward her again, studying the pale human skin, the visibility of his veins, the heartbeat that she could feel at his wrist. "You are still fragile," she said. "Biologically, you will always be limited compared to my people. Your muscles are not as strong as ours. Your mind cannot calculate at our speed. You will never be able to survive on the worlds that we inhabit without protection. All of this is true." Her dark eyes met his. "But you have something that we lost when we abandoned our emotions. You have the capacity to choose to be good when you could choose to be cruel. You have the capacity to help when you could hurt. You have instinct and intuition that guides you to do the right thing even when pure logic would suggest something else." Thought about this. It was true that humans were limited physically. It was true that there were alien civilizations out there that would be stronger and faster and smarter. But it was also true that human beings had something that transcended physical limitation. They had the capacity to love and to sacrifice. "I will tell my people," said, "that the first human I ever met was brave enough to help an enemy, that human chose compassion when destruction would have been justified, that your kind has the capacity to be something greater than technology alone." Over the next day, told more about the civilization. She explained how they had spread across dozens of worlds. She told him about the other species they had encountered. 11 species had been absorbed into society as subordinates, treated as less than equal. 6 species had been left alone. Humanity had been marked for assessment. The decision had not yet been made. "The council has been divided," explained. "Some members believe that you should be eliminated as a precaution. Others believe that you should be left alone, that you are not advanced enough to matter. But if I tell them what I have learned, if I present them with evidence that humanity has moral and philosophical strength that we can learn from, it may change the balance." Understood the weight of what she was saying. One observer, one person's testimony, might alter the fate of billions of people. It was a responsibility that no single being should have to carry. "You do not have to do this," said. "You could tell them that I captured you. You could tell them that you were unconscious and did not know what I did. You could protect yourself and your people." Skin turned a deep, dark color that understood now meant anger. "Why would you offer me an escape from doing what is right?" "Because I love my people," said, "and I understand that if you lie, you might save them. But I also understand that you would never forgive yourself for that lie, and neither would I." Reached out and pressed her forehead against his armored shoulder. Her skin shifted to that soft green and silver, a color that now meant peace and acceptance. "I will tell them," she said. "I will tell them everything." Rescue ship appeared on the 4th day, descending from the purple sky like a mechanical god. Its hull was dark silver, reflecting the light of 442b's distant sun. Fire trailed behind it as it slowed its descent, using technology that could barely comprehend to lower itself to the plateau. The ship was massive, easily the size of the entire human settlement 30 kilometers away, and stood together on the high ground, watching the vessel land 200 meters away. Neither of them spoke. Could see skin shifting through colors more rapidly now, patterns that expressed something deep and complex. This was her choice point. This was where she had to decide whether to speak the truth or remain silent. Doors opened along the side of the ship and soldiers emerged. They were different from in ways that made understand how far they had taken their modifications. They were taller, easily over 2 meters, with bodies that showed obvious technological integration. Their skin was similar to in its ability to shift colors, but it was harder, more armored. Technology was woven into them visibly. Metal shone at their joints and along their spines. They carried weapons that looked like nothing had ever seen. The weapons did not have barrels or triggers. They were simply smooth shapes held in augmented hands, and knew instinctively that they would be devastating if activated. When the soldiers began moving toward them, understood what was about to happen. They would take away. They would question her about her mission and her observations, and they would make a decision about humanity based on what she told them. He prepared himself for the worst, stepped forward to meet the soldiers, saw what appeared to be a commanding officer at the front of the group. The commander was even more heavily augmented than the other soldiers. Technology covered nearly 30% of his visible body, integrated seamlessly into his flesh. And the commander spoke in the language, a series of sounds that could not understand. The translator in his suit could not process it. He watched as hands moved, expressing concepts that her words could not convey alone. Her skin flickered through colors constantly. Blues and reds and golds mixed together in patterns that seemed to carry meaning. The soldiers glanced back at several times. One of them raised a weapon in his direction, but the commander gestured sharply for him to lower it. Whatever was saying, it was having an effect. The conversation lasted nearly 30 minutes. Stood alone, watching the alien beings communicate about the fate of his entire species. His heart was moving fast in his chest. His hands were clenched into fists inside his suit's gloves. This was the moment. This was when everything changed. Then did something that surprised everyone on the plateau. She turned away from the commander and walked directly back to. When she reached him, she stood beside him deliberately, placing herself in a position that made it clear she was choosing to stand with him. Her skin had taken on a brilliant silver color, bright and strong. The soldiers seemed shocked by this action. The commander approached slowly, his movements measured and careful. When he spoke, his voice came through's translator in clear English, though the voice was mechanical and cold. "The commander wants to know why you are standing with the human," the commander said. "You should be with your people." "I am with my people," said, her voice clear and steady. "Because I have learned that being with your people means choosing to stand with those who need help. This human showed me kindness when he had every logical reason not to. This human chose compassion when destruction would have been easier and more practical." Felt his heart rise in his chest. She was doing it, she was telling them. "I have observed this human for 4 days," continued. "I have watched him risk his own survival to help an unknown alien. I have felt his heartbeat beneath his fragile skin. I have seen his determination to live not just for himself, but for his entire species. I will not recommend elimination." The commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been surprise or might have been calculation. It was impossible to tell with beings who had removed emotion from their consciousness. "You understand that the council may overrule your recommendation," the commander said. "Other factors may take precedence. Your personal observation may be deemed insufficient to change policy." "I understand," said, "but I must tell the truth as I have witnessed it. To remain silent would be to betray everything that the claim to value. We claim to value logic and truth. Here is the truth. I cannot remain silent." The commander studied and then studied. He seemed to be calculating something, processing information at a speed that no human mind could match. Finally, he nodded, a gesture that seemed to indicate acceptance or perhaps respect. "Your recommendation will be noted," the commander said. "The council will be informed of your observations. Come, we must return for a complete debrief." The soldiers moved forward, but they did not approach with weapons drawn. Instead, they brought medical equipment, advanced technology that looked like nothing had ever seen. They worked on S's wound and could see the injury healing under their treatment. The blue blood was sealed away. The flesh began to knit together. Within minutes was completely healed. As the soldiers worked and did not speak, but her hand found his, and they held each other as the rescue proceeded. Her skin was still that brilliant silver, the color that meant clarity and strength. When the medical work was finished, the commander turned to. The commander said, I will report that you rescued the scout and provided medical care without knowledge of her species or mission. This will be noted as a factor in our decision. Your actions may have prevented what would have been a tragic misunderstanding between our peoples. Did not know what to say. He nodded, understanding that the commander had just given him something precious. The commander had given room to tell the truth without her words looking like they came from captured memory or coerced testimony. He had acknowledged that human action had merit. As was led away toward the ship, she turned back to look at one final time. Her skin shifted to that soft green and silver, the colors of peace and hope. If my people choose peace, she said, I hope we will meet again. We will, said. He believed it with certainty he could not explain. We will meet again. The rescue ship rose into the purple sky, carrying back to her people and to a testimony that would be delivered to the council. Watched until the ship disappeared into the upper atmosphere and was gone. He stood alone on the plateau, surrounded by the orange dust and the distant mountains. He was uncertain whether he had just helped save humanity or condemned it. He would not know for months. He would not know until the council made their decision. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He knew that he had done the right thing, and he knew that would tell the truth, no matter what it cost her. 6 months passed before humanity heard from the. During that time, was pulled back to Earth and debriefed extensively by the military and by politicians who wanted to understand every detail of his encounter with. They asked him the same questions over and over again. What did the ship look like? How advanced was their technology? Was intelligent, or was she operating on pure instinct? Could humanity compete with them militarily if it came to war? Answered all their questions as accurately as he could, but he also told them something else. He told them that if humanity was going to survive contact with it would not be because of military strength or technological advancement. It would be because they had values that human values might appeal to. They valued truth. They valued logic. And if humanity showed them that compassion was logical, that kindness made sense even to a civilization that had removed emotion from their consciousness, then maybe peace was possible. The military leaders did not seem to believe him. But then the message arrived. It came on a communications frequency that they provided to the Earth government. It was a formal transmission from something called the Council, and it extended an invitation. Earth was requested to send representatives to a neutral station for negotiation. The message was clear. They were not coming to destroy humanity. They were coming to talk. Humanity reacted with a mixture of fear and hope. There were protests. There were people who believed that the negotiations were a trap, that they would use the meeting to gather intelligence before launching an attack. But there were also people who understood what the message meant. They had decided that humanity was worth engaging as a potential partner. Was selected to be part of the human delegation. He was the first human to have made contact with the. He was the one who could best explain the nature of the alien civilization to Earth's leaders. 3 months after the message arrived, found himself aboard a human ship traveling to the neutral station. The station was a massive structure built by some ancient alien civilization, abandoned centuries ago and now maintained by the. It hung in space at the neutral point between 442b and the inner colonies of human space. When docked and entered the station, he expected to see more of the heavily augmented soldiers he had seen on 442b. Instead, he saw a diverse range of. Some were heavily modified, clearly built for combat or specialized tasks. Others were less augmented, their bodies more similar to. He understood then that they had many different castes and types, all of them created through deliberate modification and selection. The human delegation was escorted through corridors that were clean and organized and cold. Everything about the technology emphasized function over comfort. There were no decorations. There was no art. Everything was designed to serve a purpose and nothing more. Met with the council in a chamber that was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The counselors were floating in what appeared to be gel suspension chambers, their bodies attached to massive computer systems. They were the most heavily augmented he had seen, almost more machine than biological. When they communicated, it was through a combination of speech and direct data transmission that bypassed normal language entirely. But he understood the message. They had made a decision. Humanity would be contacted and offered membership in what they called the Coalition. Earth would be allowed to advance at its own pace, would offer technology and knowledge, but the decision to accept would be humanity's choice. And it had been testimony that had convinced them. That night was brought to a viewing chamber. It overlooked the stars, vast and infinite and beautiful. He stood alone, looking out at the cosmos when he heard her voice. "I told them everything," said. Turned to see her standing in the doorway. She was different from how he remembered her, stronger somehow. Her skin was more controlled, the colors shifting with deliberate purpose rather than reflexive emotion. But her eyes were the same, those large, dark eyes that had first looked at him with fear and then with wonder. They listened, said. Moved to stand beside him at the window. Her skin shifted to that soft green and silver, and he understood that meant she was at peace. "The council listened," she said. "I told them how you helped me with no expectation of reward. I told them how your kind chooses mercy when strength would be easier. I told them that humans are not weak despite their unmodified bodies, but strong because of their choice to be kind. I told them that you showed me what my people lost when we abandoned emotion." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the stars. "Some of the council still wanted to eliminate your species," continued. "They argued that humanity was too unpredictable, too irrational, too infected with emotion to be trusted. But I asked them a question. I asked them if the most logical decision was always the right decision." "What did they say?" asked. "They could not answer," said. "Because if pure logic was always right, they would not have removed emotion from their consciousness in the first place. They would not have realized that something was missing. They would not have sent me to observe your people. The very fact that they sent me proved that they understand that logic is incomplete without some understanding of other values." Her delicate hand found his, and they held each other as they had on 442B, with her fragile fingers resting against his armored suit. "You know what I realized?" asked. "When I pulled away your armor and saw that you were just biological flesh, I realized that humans are brave in a way my people no longer understand. To walk among the stars with no enhancement, to face the unknown with nothing but your own flesh and your own will. That is a kind of courage that no amount of technology can create." Thought about this. It was true that humanity was limited. It was true that there were civilizations out there that would be stronger and faster and smarter. But humanity had survived on Earth not because they were the most advanced, but because they could adapt, because they could create, because they could choose to be better than they were. "The future will be difficult," said. "There are others who will question this decision. There are species who will see humans as competition or as prey. But the Council has decided. Humanity will be given a chance to prove itself." She pulled him closer, and her skin took on colors he had never seen before, colors so brilliant they seemed to carry their own light. "I did not just ask them to spare your people. I asked them to learn from your people, to remember what it means to choose kindness, to remember what it means to be truly alive." Held the alien girl in his arms, feeling the warmth of her body against his suit. Outside the viewing chamber, the stars spread out before them like a promise that humanity would not face the darkness alone, a promise that even the most advanced civilization in known space could learn something valuable from beings they had once considered primitive. The future was uncertain. War was still possible. Conflict was still likely. But in this moment, standing at the edge of known space with an alien whose people had almost destroyed his own, understood something fundamental about survival. The greatest strength was not measured in weapons or technology. It was measured in the choice to extend mercy. It was measured in the capacity to see worth in those who were different. It was measured in the courage to believe that compassion could change the course of history. And as rested against him and the stars continued their ancient dance, knew that humanity had something precious. They had hope. They had the capacity to bridge the gap between civilizations. They had the strength to choose peace when war would have been easier. And maybe that was enough.